All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Danielle, and I'm part of the marketing team here at BlueLink. So I'm just going to start off by letting you all know that the sessions are being recorded and your mics and cameras are going to remain off for most of the sessions. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I will be monitoring them. The sessions are quite short, so we'll try to answer your questions within the sessions, but if not, then they will definitely be answered by the 5th session. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you all to today's presenter, Gary Lerner. Gary is the founder and president of Gateway Checker, which officially launched in 2019. Gary and our technical team have been working together to develop the capabilities of interoperability to achieve the 2023 requirements set out by the DSCSA. So with that being said, I'm going to pass this off to Gary and we can get started. Gary, I think you're muted. Let's see if we can change that for you.
All right. Well, now I'm not on mute anymore.
There you go.
All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes. Perfect.
Awesome. It looks like we'll get going then. Thank you very much, Danielle, for the introduction and for BlueLink for this opportunity to present the 7 key things to know about DSCSA, and as well as an opportunity to introduce who Gateway Checker is. So we'll start with that. Who is Gateway Checker? And I can't seem to move my screen forward. Why is that? What do I need to do differently? Hello. There we go. We are actively involved in how to translate the drug supply chain regulations into applications that facilitate the compliance and allows businesses to operate productively. Gateway Checker, as Danielle said, was founded in 2019. It's based on 13 years experience deploying serialization solutions to more than 45 companies. We're active participants in many working groups, GS1 US Healthcare, HDA VRS working groups, to name a few, and we've helped to craft most of the application standards that are governing the US pharmaceutical traceability challenges today. In our short period of time, we've become known and respected by some of the most successful industry participants. So we're going to dive right in. As Danielle said, we don't have a lot of time in this session. We're going to talk about the DSCSA. First, I always think it's important to understand who is the agency and what are their goals. In our case, the FDA's mission is to protect and promote the public health. Their goal is to shield patients from unsafe, ineffective, and poor quality drugs. I'm sure most of us know that. Their strategy is to protect the integrity of the global supply chain, and they're doing that through an understanding of the drug life cycle. The DSCSA is their main vehicle to doing that. It enables the authentication, track, and control of the nation's prescriptions pharmaceuticals. It starts by uniquely marking the product and requiring that it be identified and tracked throughout the supply chain. It establishes electronic interoperable systems. It enhances the detection and notification of exposure to counterfeit, stolen, and otherwise not good drugs. And finally, it facilitates the detection and removal of potentially dangerous drugs from the supply chain. So today, when we go through the DSCSA, you'll see that these 4 ideals that FDA has set out have largely been accomplished once we get to the end of 2023. And so that's what we're going to talk about, or what is the DSCSA and how is it going to impact distribution? First and foremost, it's been a 10-year law enacted in 2013. It outlined incremental steps to establish an electronic interoperable traceability system. And in order to do that, the law addressed many different aspects of the supply chain, most notably are a couple of areas which I'll outline quickly. Participants, for example, it established authorized trading partners, and that established who can sell a drug and distribute a drug, and what are the regulations governing becoming an authorized trading partner and maintaining a current license. The law also addressed the product. In 2015, it was just about lot level product tracing. Of course, we had lot level product requirements, but not to the degree that was included in the DSCSA. In fact, getting to the first milestone proved to be very difficult for many in the manufacturing profession. Even though they should have been doing a lot of those things all along, they were required to document the lot level items in the environment. In 2018, that got stepped up a notch with the product identifier and being able to identify products at the item level and the homogeneous container level. There are other aspects of the law as well. Visibility is a key theme throughout this law. There were various measures to increase visibility, accountability, and responsiveness to requests for information. In 2015, verification was required to quarantine and investigate product. In 2018, verification needed to take advantage of the product identifier to understand whether a product was authentic or not. All of this, of course, is leading us up to today. And this is what we're going to focus in on today, which is what is this thing called the Enhanced Drug Distribution Security, and what is it that you need to know with regards to DSCSA. So we've identified today 7 key things for you to know, and we're going to take you through that. The first thing to know is the product identifier, which we will oftentimes annotate as PID. It's required at the package level. Drug manufacturers have to do this. They're the ones who are required by law to establish the product identifier at each product package and homogeneous shipper case. This should not be news to you guys and gals. You should, for some time now, have been seeing product identifiers come through your facility. And you would see it on the product package, and you would see it on the factory sealed shipper. Very specific requirements with regards to the PID. And also, as the law now requires, for you to traffic in pharmaceuticals without an appropriate PID that aren't governed by some sort of grandfathering would now put your company and your customers into jeopardy given DSCSA. So the product identifier is required at the package level. As we've said, it shouldn't be news to you. You should be seeing this on all of the prescription pharmaceuticals in the United States that are currently complying and conforming with DSCSA. What is it that you get with the PID? Perhaps you're aware that it enables not only uniqueness, but an access to a wealth of product insight. A quick scan of this code, as demonstrated here, this is an application developed by Gateway that we call MedCheck. It allows for the scanning of this 2D barcode and the parsing of that information into the NDC, its product name, its strength, its form, its dose, the package size, the quantity of tablets, the manufacturer, and even corresponding with the G10 that should be found on the outside of this particular package. And you can see the G10 right there, as well as something called the 11-digit NDC sometimes, or the CMS NDC identifier. Furthermore, by parsing these 4 elements, the product ID, we would be able to verify this against the manufacturer's product verification system by just accessing their information online. So one scan, a wealth of information, setting everybody up to enable drug traceability. So let's talk about the second thing to know, that electronic interoperable traceability is going to be enabled by capturing who buys what. And that is provided under something called the DTR, or something that we call the DTR, the drug transaction record. If you've read the regulation, you'll know that the drug transaction record comes under various names. You perhaps have heard TI, TH, TS, T3, T2. For the course of this presentation and the ones that follow, we're going to make this much simpler. We're going to refer to all of that as the DTR, the drug transaction record. And that's going to mean the following. First will be the TI, and the TI identifies the specifics of the exchange taking place. Accountability at the product identification level, a good, clear understanding of the buyer and the seller, as well as the date and the time that these things occurred. The items listed here on your screen, from A through J, these are the specific requirements in the DSCSA law. The other component of the DTR is the drug transaction statement, and that is an attestation. It addresses several key aspects of commitment to comply with the law. We think it's important that company leadership should take the time to know what this says. What are the implications of these statements? And how, as a leader of your company, do you make sure that the processes and controls in place fully comply? It's our opinion that you don't want to run afoul of any of these statements. You are required to make the statement as part of compliance and conformance with DSCSA. So it is something you should be familiar with. So that's the DTR. The third thing to know is that at each change of ownership, DSCSA requires the trading partners to exchange drug product tracing information, effectively the DTR. Up until now, although all the parties have access to much of the information, there is not an obligation to exchange the DTR. However, no later than November of 2023, that information must be provided at the individual serialized level, which, as you know, is the smallest saleable unit of the drug. So the law states that the DTR must be exchanged in a secure, interoperable electronic manner in accordance with the standards established. And it has to be electronic. Sure, you could pass a DTR in paper, and it might be suitable and beneficial, for that matter, for your business. However, it will not be acceptable in the eyes of the FDA should they come asking for a copy of your drug transaction record. Only an electronic form is acceptable. As a result of that, capturing and exchanging this information requires a common information framework. And this information framework has to accurately and effectively capture what happens in the physical world. And you guys and gals know this far better than myself of what's required to receive and store and manage the life cycle of pharmaceuticals. However, now you have this new requirement. It's not just about the physical goods, but under this enhanced DSCSA traceability requirement, it is also about this thing called the DTR being successfully exchanged all the way through the supply chain. So at each change of ownership, the DTR has to be exchanged. In the July 2022 guidance, which was only a few months ago, EPCIS became the FDA recommended standard for the support and enablement of electronic traceability. Have you ever seen what an EPCIS message looks like? Besides Darren and his team, of course. Few of us have. This is what it looks like. And now it can never be unseen, so to speak. This is the electronic representation of the DTR in XML format. Not very helpful for the course of this presentation and not very readable for most of us. Why did the FDA endorse a standard? Well, they endorsed EPCIS as an internationally recognized standard because it would meet the DSCSA requirements. EPCIS acts as an information exchange language, and it knows the details of the supply chain transaction. So, for example, the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why are all facilitated in that electronic representation shown in the previous slide. And it provides the ability to understand who has possession of the product. And it allows the trading partners to capture and share information about the products as they are transacted throughout the supply chain. It's also compatible with a range of different technologies, but most importantly, industry stakeholders have championed EPCIS as a suitable standard for the better part of the last 3 or 4 years. The fourth thing to know, complying with DSCSA is going to require significant changes to logistics. Process and systems really need to be far more accountable, transparent, and responsive to regulatory oversight than they've had to be up until now. They need to securely exchange, capture, and maintain this electronic drug transaction record that we talked about. And they have to do that accurately, efficiently, and consistently. And they've got to do it both with vendors as well as with customers. Again, this is a process I'm sure you're well familiar with, but now we're overlaying on the receiving process this thing called the DTR, but also capturing serialized items and case identifiers, putting that into inventory, managing as part of that inventory the parent-child integrity of the factory sealed cases, as well as associating higher level product identifiers with any shipments that you choose to send out. Fulfillment now has to capture all that product information in a shipment, and it has to generate and exchange your own DTR to reflect what you're shipping. Furthermore, when returns come, we've got to maintain that integrity in anything that happens to come back to us. We have to establish what's coming back and the serialization process as well. On top of that, we've got an integrity management challenge all the way throughout the business. For example, only interact with authorized trading partners. How do you know who's authorized? The ability to investigate and verify fraudulent, recalled, adulterated product. Be able to retain transaction records for the better part of the next 6 years. Verify the product identifiers on any product coming or going. And be able to promptly respond to regulatory and trading partner requests. Moving on. The fifth thing to know is that trading partners have to reconcile these transactions. The DSCSA requires that who's ever buying the transaction has to confirm the veracity of the inbound as well as subsequent outbound transactions. So it isn't really just limited to the purchaser, but it's also to the seller. From the purchaser's standpoint, they're only allowed to procure something or receive something if they've received the transaction record before or at the time of that transaction. And they have to incorporate this information into their own systems so that they can be used for product tracing, as we demonstrated in the prior slide. The FDA suggests ways, or the need for that matter, for the businesses to automate the reconciliation of the associated information, as well as to undertake reconciliation upon physical receipt of the product, and then before selling the product as well. So again, there's an electronic representation, there's a physical representation, and they need to match. And there's ways to do that from both the selling end as well as the purchasing end. The sixth thing to know is that Verification of the product and the product identifier at the package level is a requirement. And errors and discrepancies that may be discovered, they need to be identified, communicated, and resolved within 3 business days. And part of that is working backwards with the supplier to make sure that the discrepancies can be resolved. In the interim, product is not to be sold until those errors and discrepancies have been resolved. And if they happen to be suspect or illegitimate, you need to follow the suspect process. The regulations is pretty specific with regards to recalls and suspect products. And frankly, we expect the FDA to tighten up some of these things as the regulations continue. The 7th thing to know is that non-compliance to DSCSA has real business and personal risks. The failure to comply with a DSCSA traceability requirement is considered by the FDA as a prohibited act. The law requires prohibited acts to be subject to not only business liability, but personal liability as well. The regulation has given the government quite a few things it can do with regards to fines, seizure of goods, loss of license, injunctions, restitution, as well as civil and criminal violations of up to $500,000, also including imprisonment of not more than 3 years for criminal acts. So what do you need to worry about as a business leader? Where is the areas of risk? We've covered many of them today. From our experience, the product identifier marking requirements are probably in pretty good shape coming from the drug manufacturer, but it's all of the product integrity or system integrity checks that we talked about in the course of this presentation for you to know and be well aware of integrity from the item level to the shipper case, as well as the buyer-seller transactions, responsiveness to regulatory requirements, which could result in fines and penalties, as well as your ability to handle suspect product and saleable returns, and just the overall requirement that the FDA can come back anytime in 6 years of you handling a product and ask you to produce drug transaction records associated with your receipts or your serialized order fulfillment. Okay, we covered quite a bit. It's 22 minutes from when we started, according to my time clock. And let me summarize the 7 key things to know about the enhanced drug distribution security. The product identifier is required at the package level we talked about. The DTR is the key enablement for traceability. The law requires that that be exchanged at each change of ownership. Systems and processes have to support the needs of DSCSA, as well as the regulatory oversight that comes with that. The trading partners have the obligation to reconcile the transactions. The reporting and communications infrastructure needs to enable prompt, accurate, and complete response to all sorts of exception handling use cases that will occur with regards to traceability. And finally, non-compliance to DSCSA has real business and personal risks. I know we covered an awful lot of ground in a short period of time. I'm hopeful that this has registered with you and that you understand the stakes here, as well as some paths forward with regards to DSCSA. We'd like to challenge you a little bit with regards to some challenge questions, and that can be found. I believe Danielle's going to probably send you a link, but we have access to the. I guess I can't. I have to shut this off. There's a Survey Monkey that has been established that you can take this webinar quiz and the first winner within the next few hours, we'll award an Amazon gift card to. There's also an opportunity towards the end of this to ask any questions that don't get answered in the next 5 minutes, as well as give us some feedback on how this presentation was beneficial and how it can be better. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and I'll be glad to take any questions as long as they're not too hard.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you again to everybody who joined and sat through this session. The next session is going to take place October 5th, and it's about how the DSCSA impacts wholesale distributors. So we will see you all again October 5th, and I did put the SurveyMonkey link in the chat. We'll stay on for a few extra minutes so you guys can click that link and answer the questions and hopefully win an Amazon gift card.